call to order the infrastructure special committee.
Select committee, yes.
Is that it?
The select committee. yeah,
Select committee,
infrastructure.
SIC, S-I-C. So we kind of expected kind of a light crowd, so we should kind of reset the table and try to establish where do we go from here. I'm already thinking about where do we go to the next meeting. Okay, so the bulk of the agenda today is we've had 8 or 10 items to consider as sources of revenue that we want to earmark for roads and drainage specifically. Agreed? And we keep bouncing on the same set of revenue streams. And so I went ahead and allowed this meeting to occur today despite a small agenda because CTAS has responded with, there's one copy for, we can copy more. Hey,
Come on.
so CTAS responded and they have 10 bullets, not 10 bullets of revenue streams that they've rendered opinions. And those 10 bullets, we can absorb this and kind of touch base on it at the next meeting, but the 10 bullets essentially have confirmed what we surmised and what we recall from previous meetings. We have very limited revenue streams that we can choose to call on. We have a wheel tax that we could call on. We could make a motion to suggest to Public Works, to suggest to the full committee that we increase the wheel tax. And we could devote that wheel tax to a specific bucket or purpose. In our case, it would be roads and drainage. Agreed? There are some caveats to do that we've had confirmed. The full commission can present it as a resolution, can have a supermajority of 2/3 vote at 2 monthly meetings, and then there's an opportunity for the general public to submit a petition of a percentage of voters, and it could be forced into a referendum. Without that step, 2 meetings, 2/3 majority vote could implement a wheel tax. So we can choose to do that as a body. We can increase the property tax. But we've discovered through CTAS, and we're going to get, Melissa with CTAS will be here next month in all likelihood, but we've discovered from the CTAS attorney's opinions that increasing the wheel tax and earmarking it to a road, bridge, or drainage fund is not permissible by TCA. It's a little more complicated than that, surprisingly. And then all the other elements that we've described at this table are restricted by the Private Act, the Power Release Act. Now, I'm speaking relatively broadly, but generally speaking, those...
That the TCA 67-4-2901, they keep referencing.
Yeah, the Power Relief Act. Okay. Now, there is a item number 10 of the ideas we've promoted up is a special assessment district, for lack of a better term, assessment districts in general. And there does appear to be some avenue to get there, and Jimmy may have to help me if you've interpreted this, if we can be deemed a growth community, a growth county, if we've met certain increases in population over certain periods of time confirmed by the federal census, we have some capacity under TCA to do an impact fee or development tax, and I know there's some caveats that might complicate that, and we may have to cease our existing development tax and replace it with this special assessment, which is may not be a improvement ultimately. So I'm not going to pretend I can interpret this, but nonetheless, Jim, a special assessment district is also complicated and will need attorneys, interpretations, and ultimately some state legislative oversight at least, if not some TCA lobbying or revisions. And I'm hesitating because I see some vigorous reading going on, so. The special assessment district authorizes counties that qualify as growth counties to levy a county school facilities tax on residential development. The revenues required by law to be used exclusively for funding growth-related capital expenditures for education, including the retirement of bonded debt. Counties that levy a development tax or impact fee by private act under prior law may not levy the school facilities tax authorized by the Power Relief Act so long as they are levying and collecting development taxes, which suggests
One or the
can't
other.
do right.
Right.
Mr. Dodd, may I interject?
Please do.
Real quick. And I got this from CTES as well. I confirmed a lot of things that I was looking into and relate to y'all. On that last point, I think that the way that this reads is it actually probably should be broken up into maybe two different paragraphs. And the way that it was presented, it just maybe formatting got lost in the translation. Again, speaking about number 10. So I think the first part where it starts with regarding your first question and carrying it on down about 13 lines to where it ends with counties are authorized to levy special assessments by the County Powers Act, TCA 51118 and TCA 732-101. I think that is probably your first paragraph, and that is speaking specifically with special assessment districts. And then the remainder would be a second paragraph that talks about a county's ability to have impact fees or adequate facilities taxes. Now, before speaking more on the special assessment districts from the first paragraph that we've now dissected, the part about impact fees and adequate facilities tax, that goes into what you just said, that if we've got, if we had private acts for those that were in place prior to the passage of the County Powers Relief Act, then we could continue to assess those, okay? Because we wouldn't be under the County Powers Relief Act, okay? But because the county does not have, or did not have a private act for impact fees or an adequate facilities tax prior to the passage of the County Powers Relief Act, we can't do it now, all right? This goes on to state that if we were to opt in to the County Powers Relief Act, we'd first probably have to get rid of our development tax, because we do have that, okay? We don't have an impact fee, we don't have a adequate facilities tax, but we do have a development tax. We'd have to get rid of that development tax first and opt in to the County Powers Relief Act, and then we would be subjected to the requirements of that act, where, to go with what you said, any revenues collected would have to go to capital school improvements or bonded indebtedness, right? Now, moving back up to that first paragraph that we dissected that deals with special assessments, I think that's something that the county can do, notwithstanding that we have a development tax or that we're not in the County Powers Relief Act. I think regardless of the answers to all those other questions, the county could still do a special assessment district, because the way courts have interpreted special assessments is they're not taxes. They're amounts that the public pays for enjoying improvements, because the improvements that would be made would be benefiting them. So I think we could do that. Now, how that works in real life, I'm not terribly sure. I haven't looked into. You know, they cite here the County Powers Act, TCA 51118 and TCA 732-101. The first, 51118, I did pull that. And it says that counties, by resolution of their respective legislative bodies, in addition to the other powers authorized by general law or private act, may exercise the following powers granted to all municipalities, we're talking strictly cities there, by the following code sections. And it goes on to cite a bunch of different TCA that gives cities certain powers. And so this says that counties, by resolution, can have some of those same powers, and it picks them out specifically. And one of the ones that it points to is TCA 6-2-201 subsection 3, which allows cities to make special assessments for local improvements. So what this read together means that the county, by resolution, could make a special assessment for local improvements. Now, how we do that and the process by which we do that, I don't know. That'd be something maybe for this body to investigate. Cities seem to do it a lot, and I know that there is explicit and very detailed statutory provisions on how a city has to pass an ordinance for a special assessment, and that may provide this county guidance if it were so inclined to do that. I haven't looked at it in detail, but it probably involves coming up with some sort of plat or other sort of document that could be recorded to show where the improvement's going to take place, what the district's going to be. Probably has to provide notice to those that would be affected and be charged the assessment. Probably allow those same property owners to come in and object to it, and then ultimately have to be passed. Then there's a manner in which it has to be given to the trustee or the I don't know if the property assessor would be involved to deal with doing the actual assessment and collecting the fee. And what sort of arrangement when the fee has to be paid, call it fee, the assessment has to be paid. I don't know how that works, and I'm not sure if any other counties have done this, but I think that statutorily we have the authority to do it.
And you're talking, it sounded like you almost described two different avenues, but all your descriptions there were about the one avenue through MTAS.
Right, so
Your topic was one broad topic of the special assessment.
that's right.
That's not a tax, and it's not a, it's okay.
It's a special assessment. I would just
Gotcha.
call it that, you know.
And its ability to, okay.
It's
So it's the one opportunity could be.
Yeah, the county
that.
can go ahead and pay for improvements and then assess the cost or a percentage of that cost of those improvements to those landowners who are benefiting from those very improvements.
Dick, your explanation and breaking all this was perfect. That's what I needed to clear this up in my mind. I want to take the question a little bit further, and maybe you read something along this line. So if you passed a special assessment, and say, for instance, we did it for the construction of a new school, and you know where that school zone is going to be, and what homes will be in that school zone, because obviously a school is designed to service a certain number of homes. Can you assign that assessment both to existing homes, and then as future homes are brought into that school district, to the future homes also as they're built? I'm assuming that, and the reason I say is I'm assuming a school zone, I know a school zone is going to be fairly fluid. As more homes are built, the school zone is going to grow smaller in acreage because it can only service so many students, which sometimes equate to homes. So can you make this special assessment fluid so that it would change? For instance, some houses that are zoned there now would pay the assessment, whether it be $100 a year, say, until they are zoned out of that, and then it falls off of them, and the share now burden goes to another new home that was built. to pick up where that, I mean, is it possible to
Yeah.
make it fluid like that?
I don't know the answer to that question because I have not looked into other counties who have done this. I'm just aware that we have the statutory ability through the TCA 5- what was it? 118 that references those powers of the city and that specifically allow for us to make special assessments. Again, maybe checking with cities, maybe even the city of Murfreesboro would be wise. I think that they did this with a sewer district. And how and which houses came into the purview of that when they were built, if they fell off. I do think that there's a time limitation that was maybe placed on that. I'm not certain about that. I think ultimately, though, it's a matter of fairness. And in terms of, I don't know if there are principles of pro rata share, or can you only assess those that are directly abutting a road that is being widened or improved, or can you assess the outlet roads that go into a subdivision whose cars or whose properties don't affront the road that's being improved, but naturally will be having to use that? And in what capacity do you charge them less, or do you charge them more from those whose property values may be directly increased by having a widened road? Those are all the questions that probably need to be asked.
Yeah, it's fairly complex, but I like the idea if we're looking at a project, we have to build a road to service that school, then the students that go to that school will be using that road. And of course, there's no sense in assessing the farms for it if they don't have a home on it, so you couldn't really do it by acreage, it needs to be by rooftops. But everyone, in my mind, everyone that lives in that school district should be subject to that assessment, because it seems to be the pattern that as new schools are built, they become very, very popular, and everybody wants their kids to go there. And so they're going to be using that road, and it makes, because the school zone's popular, it makes their home worth more money that may not be reflected in the property taxes for some number of years down the road.
Also remember that at least at the outset, the county would be paying for the improvement, and then thereafter, once the improvement's completed, making the assessment. The alternative would be to hire or bid out for a private company to do it, and I don't know if they kind of expend the money and then, well, I'm just thinking out loud here. I don't know, which can be dangerous, by the way. I guess an alternative too would be the county take out some indebtedness or something to do it.
Then when the bond is paid off, the assessment goes away.
Maybe so.
In this case, it would literally go away, as opposed to a will tax that could be repurposed. This special assessment would go away.
Do you charge interest?
It has
I don't know. Those are all questions that maybe an examination of talking to other cities, or if CTAS knows specifically of whether any county in the state has attempted to do this. Because I do think at least by the statutes that CTAS provided, it looks like we can do it. It's just a matter of shaping how we're supposed to do it.
Then I think that I would suggest that I would like to suggest there are three realistic, I mean, I know there's that fourth. There are three realistic opportunities here I'd like this body to present forward. And then there may be a fourth. Number one, will tax. And granted, we're not all elected officials. We can't. See, we can recommend to another body. We can't do that, so let's make that clear. Will tax, special assessment district, county general contribution. I mean, just make it a budget item. And then number four, lobby the state to change law. Okay? It's time we dictate, indicate, or the outcome of this effort thus far is those are the buckets from which we can generate revenue. The will tax can be done relatively quickly, and then it may or may not go to referendum. Then we have a response. That could happen in a matter of 6 months. It can probably happen in 3 months, but 2 readings in 2 or 3 months, it could be done. The special assessment district needs homework, but it doesn't not necessarily need to lobby the state to change law. So that's a relatively short-term creation of a fund stream. The third is county general. We could just simply create another line item, right, called roads. We'd have to talk to Lisa and the mayor and Nick, but we could simply pull it from somewhere else and put it in a road fund, I suppose. And then, and then another one is that I've investigated and had CTAS look at is developer donations. A developer can donate land for schools. Developer can donate money, property, material, supplies for roads. Now, so there are some occasions where perhaps a piece of roadway the developer could donate. And then that developer might, in his pro forma or his books, have a fee per lot that could be justified and it gets contributed to a fund. The city used to do that. You'd have to contribute to your frontage and
Right, escrow account.
escrow
basically, is
account.
what
It could be
was.
an escrow of some kind. So I'm just kind of hanging that out there. It could behoove a developer to get approval with some, I know ambulance station land has been donated before, so school land perhaps. So I'm just keeping that as one of our items. So I think this body is, I would suggest that this body present to the Public Works Committee, and then I want to discuss this topic: wheel tax, special assessment district, and county general contribution. Yes, please.
That last point, the county general population or
Contribution.
contribution. So what would be the thought there?
A line item, a budget item that I think I'll have to back into it here in a minute. A line item that would be funded. A line item would be capital improvement, capital project, Plainview Road, Christiana High School. And it's a $5 million job, and we have a $5 million line item in the budget.
Do you know if CTAS has further expounded upon number 3? Where they, I don't know if this is going to what, yeah, right, what is,
No, they haven't, and that, my floating this out there was because you can't increase the property tax and devote it to a road drainage or earmark project. But if you had a capital project, could you simply float a bond and pay the
so in other
pay the
words,
debt?
you took a loan out to do a capital project that is related to building roads near a school?
Yeah,
Is that the idea? And then that would fall under, I guess, number 8, maybe 7 and 8. Or their subset, provide funds for the operation and maintenance of county schools, and then 8, repay loans for capital projects. And so you're not really assessing taxes for a specific road or bridge project per se, but instead you're repaying a loan that was taken out to fund a capital project. And I guess the question I might have is, to what extent does road improvements constitute a capital project? I don't know.
yeah.
What about the schools itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, with the school had in their budget a new road down the frontage next to a school, it would simply be built and become a road. In some cases, it could be a public right-of-way, some it could be private, like we had at Smyrna. But
I mean, the school building itself, though, I mean, it's...
and then the school building, it would,
the-
some of the roadways and other infrastructure costs just simply become the school package, and we pay for it, or we float a note and we pay the debt. So is there a way that there's a bonded project? And I think that is a shorter term set of homework and a response than lobbying the state to change state law. It's just one of the short term yes or no's, and then is it the will of the commission to do it or not? But That makes sense, Nick. Thanks for helping clarify. And I want to open those three up for further discussion, but before that, I think that one thing we have to do, and I think this will be an action step along with how does the county do a special assessment district? That's homework, right? I want to discuss the steps to do that. What's the first order? What's the first request? To whom do we make the request, and who's accountable for the answer? But here, I think we have to have a capital projects list and budget, list and anticipated costs. And our capital projects are roads and drainage. And so I don't know if we have the conversation about the 3 buckets, or we have a conversation about the capital project list and budget. What would be most productive for us to discuss next today?
I have a question, Nick. On this last page here, it's underlined, says, and I want you to clarify this, says counties that levy a development tax or impact fee by private act can't go ahead and turn around and come up with any facilities. So is that's the bottom line. We've got a development tax, so we can't come up with any kind of special assessment, school districts or anything of that nature. Is that right?
No, I think that special assessments are different. I think that we do have a development tax,
Correct.
okay? I think that we cannot now institute an adequate facilities tax or impact fee. But I do think that even though we've got the development tax, that we can do a special assessment district. Because a special assessment is not a tax. It's an assessment on properties that are benefiting from improvements. So I agree. I think I agree with your statement. Yeah.
Okay. So that could be one recommendation.
This special assessment district, we think, is potentially a separate revenue stream from a development tax or an impact fee or a schools facilities tax. It's unique, and it stands alone under TCA. It's worthy of investigating that and having somebody render an opinion. It's separate from the last paragraph that you highlighted.
Right.
I think an important part of the equation is what kind of dollars are we talking
Yes,
about?
absolutely.
You know, if we're going to raise $100,000, is it worth going to the expense of setting this whole thing up and managing it? You know, it'd be nice to know how many rooftops are in a school district and what some proposed assessments could be that are reasonable and affordable for
Right.
people that live in that part of town.
And I dare say that we have to have that conversation before we recommend a will tax to anybody.
Yes.
I think it would be foolish to.
I think we need to know all the numbers, yes,
Yeah.
for any kind of tax that we.
Right. Let's just start funding it without a end game.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be good stewardship.
Right.
As a thought, I'd love your thoughts on.
Okay. So can we come up with some recommendations to Public Works or whoever needs to go to, I mean, we've been treading water so
Right,
far.
right.
So we need to make some kind of recommendations. Step 1, consider
Okay,
this.
okay.
Step 2, consider that.
Well,
So-
let's find some numbers. I mean, if you guys would like to go through them and start with the wheel tax, how many cars, we just need to know how many cars there are that are registered in the county every year. right?
$10 added to the will tax across the board will generate
$2.5 million.
$2.5 million.
Per year.
And these figures that,
Change.
these figures
Yes.
that Lisa has provided is basically on 247,000 vehicles that are registered. Okay, and then you've got to extrapolate the new people that are coming in, 8,395 people a year, 23 people a day. I think that's the conservative figure everybody looks at now. So that's 8,000 more vehicles coming in a year. Everybody bringing at least one vehicle.
I see that as a very, and actually, that's a $10 increase, but we're gonna be saving $9 on the emissions testing that's going away. So this is only a $1 increase.
Well,
To the citizens.
if you stick with the 10, that's it. But as far as my thinking is concerned, you just be shooting yourself in the foot to recommend $10 because there's going to be as much feedback and flack from that as it would be if you're going to recommend, say, $30 that would generate $7 million, $7.5
So the
million.
net would be $21
So, okay.
an automobile then, is what you're saying, to the cost to the individuals.
Per year.
$21
Okay.
per car.
And-
And then you'd be bringing in about 3 times as much money, $7.5 million.
Plus, you'd be inserting the inflation factor of the number of vehicles that's coming in additional every year, you know. So if it was, say, well, conservatively speaking, say 7,500 vehicles a
Additional
year.
cars per year.
Okay, you'd be generating almost $250,000 more every year. And see, that.
Now, on the same token, though, you also had, more cars means you need more
Exactly.
roads and
Exactly.
more maintenance.
Exactly right. So it would be impacting the people that are creating part of the problem.
Yeah, vicious
Vicious cycle.
Yeah,
Because see
but
that-
at least it does provide a way to bring in
Right.
additional money in future years to support those
And
cars.
I did a little figuring, and there are 36 counties that don't have a wheel tax at all. And there are 21 of the counties, and I don't know whether y'all got this list from CTAS or not, but the counties with, did y'all get a copy of this? Major tax rates for the property tax, motor vehicle, and so forth and so on?
No.
Okay, anyway, there's 21 counties that's got a higher wheel tax than Rutherford County now. And out of that 21, 14 of those 21 counties have a higher property tax rate than Rutherford County has. And some of the counties are small counties, but it ranges anywhere from, I think, $110. Let's see, I believe that was the highest one, $110.
For wheel tax?
Yeah, $110. Decatur County's got $110, and to about 15 is the lowest that any of the counties have. But, you know, and like I said, I don't know whether we need to make a recommendation about a dollar figure, but I know that the county commissioners are going to take just as much flack if they support a $30 wheel tax as if they support a $10 wheel tax. And the people that I've talked to, if there's any such thing as what's considered as a fair tax, it would be wheel tax, because all the people, even though they are paying property taxes in apartments, all the people that are driving cars, they're going to be contributing
Everybody pays
to
it.
the problem that's existing right now. And on a $30 increase will be 8 cents a day
Per vehicle.
per vehicle.
Some have multiple vehicles.
And
There's-
on a humorous note, I was talking to somebody about that, and they said, well, talk about, say, $30 on a vehicle. So what about somebody that had 5 vehicles? I said, well, holy mackerel, anybody that can afford 5 vehicles ought to be able to afford $150 more. You know, you know, but
I would have one request to the county commissioners, though. If any type of tax increase is passed, and we're talking about for the purpose of roads, that it be specifically designated in that law that it goes to the roads. It's not skimmed off to general fund, because we've seen this, you know, that's the way a lot of times government works, you know, that money kind of disappears and then you're back again talking about the same subject.
And it's a sore spot for us natives and us folks that have been here a while. We all remember, and Joe Swanson Jr. brought it up. Our first meeting, this sick meeting, the wheel tax was created for Upper Riverdale's and was pledged to go away.
Yep.
And I know it wasn't $52 back then. And that not only gone away, it's gone up. And it's in 3 different buckets. Paul, do you recall which 3?
Yep. 40% goes to schools, 30% goes to the general fund, 30% goes to the highway department.
So with this additional, then this additional wheel tax, you're telling us 40% of it would go to the schools?
No. You could take whatever that says, say it passed $30 increase on the wheel tax. Okay, that $30 could be specifically designated to go into whatever you wanted to do.
Right off the top.
Right off the top.
Before you start
And it wouldn't
these other
affect
slices.
anything at all. 'Cause
General fund and others.
It
That's
wouldn't
our
affect anything at
understanding.
all, because that would be additional revenue. You say, okay, you've got 247,000 vehicles now. All right, if you added $30 more to that, this revenue, that these 247,000 vehicles, the fee on that would still be specifically designated 40, 30, 30. And then this $30 would be, okay, so we'd be giving Rachel this amount of money, but the additional $30 would specifically go to you.
I would have to have that clarified,
I mean, it would-
I think that's
it-
important.
it-
It's
it-
a
it-
piece of whatever we do.
yeah.
I think you can do that. I think you can do that. You did a resolution increasing the wheel tax. You could not mess with any other stuff that's done in the past and the way that that's being allocated, and just this new amount earmarked specifically for roads. I think you can do that.
Could the resolution,
And
I would even-
I've only places stated that it could be.
and I wonder if
Directly
even
earmarked.
the resolution could state that in perpetuity, or if it can't be reallocated to another purpose. I've wondered, the resolution. could-
Probably say it can only be amended by a vote of the county commission, so the issue would have to come back to the county commission before you can mess with that money. You can also put a term on it, probably too, that it's going to only be for 10 years, or however
And
long.
have to be revisited, or
Yes.
if it's not going to roads, blah, blah, blah. So we could, I would certainly be for that as a voting commissioner, that
Wheel tax makes the most sense of anything. I mean, roads are built for cars, so the cars should pay.
if you got 5
If
cars.
you have 5 cars, you probably
Or you're a
drive
truck
more.
or a bus, or if you're
Yeah.
a transportation professional, I hate to keep ponying up on the small businesses and entrepreneurs, but nonetheless, that enterprise is
Well, their
profiting from it, so-
customers are riding on
on the road, so
so
it does make some sense. Now,
they should pay.
so that brings us to I think it segues into, I need Doug's, Mike's, and ultimately Greg's help, and the road board. Could we even consider talking about a wheel tax in front of the full commission or even Public Works without, we just talked about 3 million, 5 million, 7 million, depending on, without some kind of a better document or file of some kind, if not a full transportation plan. That's 3 years away, but we got to have a budget. We got to have something for that money to go to before, or do we?
Well, I think ultimately you want the two to work hand in hand. Now, I don't, and I'll rely on Nick to kind of guide some of this, but I don't, in my mind at least, I don't think there's anything that says you couldn't just go ahead and start the fund, start getting money in the fund while the plan is under development. Because, what we're there's kind of 2 components to it. You've got the long-range transportation plan, which shows over time, you're going to have short-term improvements, midterm improvements, long-term improvements. There's going to be some that make more financial sense, and some that are more immediately necessary than others. So you've got the plan that identifies the road improvements, but then you have kind of what you were talking about, Bill, kind of like a capital improvements plan. It's similar to what at the MPO, they've got the long-range plan, and then they have like the 3-year work plan. You know, these are the projects that everybody wants to get done. These are the ones that are going to be fiscally constrained. So in other words, these are the ones that we have money for that we can pay for. So we look at, it's like a prioritizing at that point. You look at the plan and say, okay, these are short-term improvements. These are the ones we really need to tackle now. Out of the ones we need to tackle now, these are the ones that really need the attention. And then you would have a, in a perfect world, you'd have a list of those things, a capital improvements plan that would show these are the things that we need to spend money on now, how much money. It's more detailed, more budgeted out over fiscal years, because most road improvements take multiple years.
And then the politicians would debate how to
Exactly.
prioritize or fund, or
Right.
does it?
Right.
Okay.
There's certainly no shortage of projects, and even if a project is not undertaken the day the first dollar's collected, at least it's that much less we have to borrow
Right.
2 years down the road.
Right, and for those,
To build a
we
project.
were talking about like escrow accounts and things, that's something we've talked multiple times at the planning commission about. We've never really set anything up, and I think one of the reasons is just due to the fact that, and we've had this discussion, Jim, you may recall this at the planning commission, where we talked a little bit about, if there's no other funding revenue or sources available, we can have a developer dedicate right away along a project, along their frontage. We can have them dedicate, some money for escrow for whatever those improvements would be. But if there's really no chance that this road's ever going to be approved because you have one project on this road, you have hundreds of other properties that aren't developing, obviously their little portion not going to take care of it. What's the sense in putting money that's going to sit into a bank account and just do nothing,
Right.
really, except, it gains interest, I suppose. But if you had something that backed that up, if you've got several developments along a stretch of road, plus it's a road that is identified as one of the critical improvements in your capital improvements plan, well, then you would have a reason to take that money. You have that money from the developers that you got, and then you would take whatever money from this other funds that you're talking about. It all kind of plays in at that
Yeah,
point.
okay, so their investment could be
The program can be realized.
justified and then
Exactly,
utilized.
yeah. 'Cause
Are you
I'm a-
suggesting that if my frontage, could that escrow be used on another project
I would think it would need to be used on the road.
in that you?
That's what I would think.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's some of the minutia that we.
Right.
So then, Jim, as a non-elected official, all of us are taxpayers. As a non-elected official, could you support a will tax to start funding if we dedicate it to roadway, so perhaps it could pay for studies, traffic studies, design? Some design elements might have to be some consultation from professionals to help build the greater fund that would come in the future, that would be will tax, special assessment, debt payments and donations. Could you support a
So
will
your
tax
question-
without a full capital projects list and budget?
So you're saying, would I support something that was, that the money was allocated towards design work and other things? Or
Towards a yet-to-be-determined budget. We're giving politicians, government, money for a future list of projects and a yet-to-be-determined budget. Could you support a will tax now, earmarked for roadway and drainage, to start building up a fund, and we determine the ultimate budget and list of that roadway line item in the future?
Most people understand, or do they? Don't most people understand that when you start a road, it takes several years before the first dozer pulls out there on the property, because you have right-of-way purchase, you have utilities that have to be moved, and you have design work and all the other things. So the hard part is before you see the first dozer. Is that what you're asking me? Does it bother me as a taxpayer to not see progress happening out there before the money is allocated? Is it-
Yes. And could you trust us to take part of the money now as we build a bigger budget that we're going to fully fund in the future? You trust us to take
I don't think that the money is going to is going to build into any significant amount. You're going to be, like I say, you're going to be in the design work pretty quickly. The engineers are going to be working on it for a year before you even start purchasing right away.
The question I think that you're getting to, though, is the question that's going to come up when you say we need to do wheel tax. Even people who said, yes, that makes sense, you're going to want to know what is your amount that you're trying to get an annual improvement for, and back calculate how much you need to raise the wheel tax, rather than saying a new wheel tax amount of some amount, because you know you can spend
Yeah.
whatever amount that ultimately comes out to. So as a taxpayer, I want to know that you guys have looked at it and you need $5 million a year to make intersection and widening improvements that are going to help overall. And so this year you can do 5 projects around, and then next year, as growth patterns happen, you're going to look at where those next year's 5 projects need to be, and the next year's 5 projects, and that's $5 million a year or some other number, and then back that $5 million into what the wheel tax needs to be, an amount of the $30. But if you come up with the number that, well, really we need more like $20 million a year to do everything that we need to do, or maybe you only need $3 million a year to do.
Well, could we start with the amount that we've identified for improvements around the Christiana schools? I mean, that's a
And,
pretty firm number.
Sure, and that where you're talking about sort of 2 different things. You got wheel tax that could be, because you know ongoing that Rutherford County and Middle Tennessee is still in growth mode, that you're going to have a need to do improvements every year really for future. In 20 years you're still going to be doing growth mode things, but also you've got the potential maybe to do special assessments, which school zone really makes a lot of sense, with the negative aspect being people's challenge to the legal part of it of, well, we're going to get rezoned and we won't be in that new school district. So that core of whatever it is, 1,000 people, 1,000 students, meaning 1,000 families, if that was defined really well, like for the city when they did their sewer projects, you know exactly which houses and then exactly which areas go to that sewer. So when future houses go on that, it's well defined and that will never change.
Right.
But with your school district, as like you said, as you get more subdivisions, the area starts out big, and then as more people move in, the area gets a little smaller.
Or it just changes entirely because the next school's added, so they shift all
So
the
it
zones.
shifts.
Yeah.
That's the part of the idea of special assessment district for school district overall. I mean, that's great. I think the challenge is how do you deal with the fact that the school
It's
rezoning
fluid.
Yeah.
can occur?
And that's something that you don't have a whole lot of control over.
Because the other thing is that special assessment district over time, because when I was living in Birmingham a few years ago, they had several cities that were out of growth mode. They were in sustained mode. Like the cities have bumped up against each other. They're not growing bigger. Population's not really growing huge. So they have maintenance needs, but they don't have new growth through development tax that's then funding things. So wheel tax is a way that you would over time still have funding once you reach that point that you're not in growth mode anymore.
Well, we know a set amount for a school. We can come up with a set amount. We know how many students the school will serve. If that, how long does it take to pay off say a high school or?
I think they're on 15, 20 years.
So could we take that 15 years divided by the number of students that will serve and charge a yearly assessment to the people living in that zone? If the zone changes, they drop off, their assessment changes. But you'll still have the same set number of students and the set number of
Yeah, the same
Fund.
nexus and the same privilege, even if you come in and out of the zone. So we're back to the CTAS, or some avenue, some accountable authority needs to answer that question. We've asked the same question in some different ways. We're all kind of honing in on that topic. So I think the best use of our time is, to whom do we ask that question? To whom do we seek authoritative answers? And who's accountable to ask the question to bring it back to us? And Nick may be a player in that.
Happy to assist. I think getting involved, CTAS involved a little bit is very helpful, since they have, they know what's going on in other counties
Okay.
On a better basis than I do. But I'm happy to work with Melissa and investigate that. It may be that no other county has ever done this. And so when looking at that, we have to be very thoughtful if we're going to proceed on it. I certainly won't have all of the answers, at least at the outset, on how to frame it. And you probably will have a number of people that'll have a lot of questions and may have issues with the way that the county would decide to do it. A lot of it's going to be, policy based. In other words, not my avenue, but y'all on where the assessment's going to be and who's going to be affected by it. But in helping shape the legal parameters of it, happy to assist.
Okay. So I will communicate with Melissa Kelton. I think it's defaulted to me thus far. So she has committed to attend. She was in another county today. She had been double booked, so she couldn't join us. I can't confirm she's here every month.
I wonder if
every month.
anybody,
We have-
I wonder if they would know anybody in the
Actually,
AG's office to consult with too. I don't know if this question, I haven't found anything yet
Okay.
where an AG's opinion has been issued on the ability of a county to implement by resolution a special assessment district tied specifically to a school zone.
Could you and I craft an email to her?
Sure. Happy to do that.
And that's appropriate to communicate? Okay. And if you and I can collaborate, we'll reach up to her. And so these opinions here are from various people, so whoever that may be, other attorneys that are
I'm not
associated.
sure,
So
but
I
maybe
don't,
so.
yeah, and so whatever resources she has, we can
So
maybe get to the AG.
my thought that, in the early stages of what they're now calling the Tan Oak schools, Plainview and Sledge, we were given a school zone for the elementary school, the first school that they're going to build. The school board knows exactly how many kids are residing
Yeah.
in that district. I mean, that's pretty detailed information. So if we know how many kids are in that zone, how much the school's going to cost, and how long it's going to take to pay that off, that could be divvied up into 15 years or whatever. So
I think you need to know how many rooftops are in that
Well-
school zone, more so than the schools, because it's hard to ask, because you can't charge one home 3 times the tax.
Well, that's right. I mean,
Kids.
They have the data though.
We understand the nature of schools and government works is even if you have no kids or you have 5 kids, you're still going to pay the same tax. And I don't think we can tax based on the number of
So
students.
you're
we need to
saying-
know
okay.
rooftops in a school zone
Right.
on average.
Well, let me just throw this out there too. Using the Tan Oak Plainview example, that's a 3-school, eventually, a 3-school campus. So if the schools, let's just say the elementary school's built and you've got a fee for that, then you have the middle school and then somewhere at the high school, it's feasible that the people living in all 3 of those are going to get 3 separate assessments. That's what we'd be saying then if you're doing it
Yeah,
that way.
I don't think you could do it that way.
Well, I'm just
Maybe.
throwing, unless you just make it one assessment, okay, we know kind of goes back to what Mike was saying, if you know how much a high school is, a middle
I
school, and
guess
an
you're gonna have
elementary
to pick the
school.
largest school zone of the 3 of them.
It's,
was it 2,500 kids for the high school,
There's
1,500 for the
different
middle,
zones.
and 1,000 for the
Three
elementary?
different zones, right? Potentially.
yeah,
Yeah.
because, the zones, they're not
Footprint.
the same. The high school zones.
It would
and
have to be the
middles-
largest, or, so, those
It
are
has to
the,
be if any
Yeah,
portion,
middle
any one of
be into
those
a high or
schools.
something like that,
If any one of those schools, if you live in any one of those schools, you're gonna pay the fee one time, I would think, because you're still gonna be using that road. Whether your child goes to elementary school or goes to high school, you're still need to drive down that road twice a day.
That rooftop.
So I would think,
Well, what about, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, I'm sorry, but if you've got someone that is not going there, let's say they're there for an elementary school, but they have to go somewhere else for a middle school and a high school, do you pay the one assessment for the middle or the elementary that you have to pay a separate one for the other schools at that point? Because you're using different roads?
Potentially, yes.
You know, I'm not saying it's a bad idea.
Or you
I just-
you might be paying an assessment for the new elementary you're going to, but your middle and high may be in developed areas that already have roads that are
Or
adequate.
just simply.
Right, and so you don't have to worry about
So you don't
that,
have an
yeah.
assessment for
Or
those.
can
Any
they-
assessment needs to be directly tied to the improvement being made.
Okay.
That's what
So
I'm
it's
saying.
not, it's not retroactive in that sense. You
Your
can't say,
rooftops,
yeah.
your rooftops, your parcel numbers. I mean, there's and the county has all that. And then could it, if the assessment district grew by virtue of the elementary school and now has a middle school and there's 50 more rooftops, does the initial assessment go down? There's a gross number you're meeting and it goes down. And if you had the high school, it goes down again because you're generating X number of dollars per year to pay off the debt. If you divide it by more people, there's less cost per household.
Now, you're not.
Things like that.
Now, you're not trying to pay off the debt that was utilized to build the school facilities.
Yeah, the road, I mean, whatever
We can't,
topic
Well, I don't know, but I guess that's a question.
our conversation is about.
Of how, I mean,
all
generally.
the infrastructure. I'm trying to tie it back into schools because that's
I think it's easier
75% of our budget.
with the roads. It's infrastructure that's being utilized to charge people an assessment just to use a school. That's what, it's generally what taxes are used to pay for.
But this is not a tax.
No, I understand. I'm talking about if you're tying it to the $15 million it takes to build a school, as opposed to $100,000 to put a new intersection in with lights and create 4 lane instead of 2 for a 1.5 mile stretch to XYZ subdivision. That there's a difference.
Yeah, well, if you're doing it by the road, then I think it makes more, you're doing it by specifically, you don't necessarily have to know how much the school is at that point because you have a better idea what the improvements are than by school zone. That would make a lot more sense.
I think it's going to be important to understand, I think we probably all do, that even if we pass the special assessment zone for that school, it's not going to be the panacea that pays for the entire road. I think if you do the math real quickly in your head and it's a $6.5 million road, that assessment would be huge on 3,000 homes or however many rooftops are in that zone. So, but let's not for a minute think that suddenly we can have one tax to cover everything because nobody could afford to pay it.
Yeah, agreed.
It's going to have to be a small tax on a
Agreed.
large number of people and maybe 3 different taxes on a very large number.
And I dare say that government's business is not necessarily is to profit from these endeavors. And
Absolutely.
perhaps the government pays 50% and the special estimate pays 50 or 60, 40 or 80. I'm just. So I think that CTAS, we could run these scenarios and we'll pick them up again next month. CTAS in the meantime perhaps can give us some authoritative responses and Nick and I will take on that task. Thank you, Nick. I think that we have to go back to would we consider floating a will tax to the public works and could we argue that a will tax, we know we have $8 million projects on the horizon around that school. Could we advocate for an immediate will tax to be earmarked for roadway and drainage, and knowing that the full budget is, that these funds will help create the full budget and the list of priorities, and that other revenue streams will be determined based on the yet to be confirmed budget? Can we support a will tax now for a yet to be confirmed list and budget?
I can do that. I see no reason to talk this thing to death. I mean, we see the needs that we have, and it's certainly not getting any better. As I think someone at this table one time said, this is the best the roads are ever going to be. So we better get started.
Yeah. So then, okay, we have one action of CTAS authority. Number two, Paul, would you advise that we start recommending a wheel tax to the Public Works?
I would, and I know that the $30 keeps sticking in my mind because of what it will generate due to the fact that Greg with the Highway Department has already allocated $3 million, and this could possibly wind up $7 million to just take care of this one project down there on Plainview Road.
And I think his suggested budget was just a Band-Aid.
Yeah, I mean, this, he is assured, and I assure you from the other 6 members of the road board and everything, the $3 million that we approved for him to allocate, this is not an ongoing thing as far as, this is a one-shot deal.
Yeah.
Right.
We
Right
have to
now.
get engineers.
So don't depend on him or don't depend on the Highway Department for the other $3.5–4 million. So this, and to make that wheel tax more palatable, I mean, we could even say, hey, 50% of that goes to capital projects for education, because they always have a wish list of what they want to do, separate from the rest of the budget. And 50% would go to the Highway Department. So that would make it more palatable. You're taking care of the kids more ways than one, because the school system, road situations and everything, so I don't know. But
I'm going to disagree with you on that. I think they have tasked us with finding a way to build roads and drainage. I don't want to get off in the weeds on all these other projects that the county may have. I want to focus on roads because that's what we're supposed to be focused on. That's my understanding, right? So before I start saying, let's raise the tax and we're going to start funding all these other parts of government.
Well, I was just
That's
using that as
outside
an
our
example.
purview.
I was just using that as an example, Jim, that you could allocate whatever you want to out of the money from the wheel tax. You can do whatever you want to with it. So just what would be more palatable for the motoring public and the taxpayers to pay, Say, well, I know part of this is going to capital projects for the school, in addition to the 40% that they're already getting. But hey, I don't have any problem with it either way, but I know, just...
I just know there's no money, that much money going into road construction right now, nothing.
Maintenance only.
And
Maintenance only.
75% of the budget is to schools. I get it, it's expensive to educate kids, but we gotta have a place to drive, I don't wanna go to war to make the budget even for schools even bigger. I love our schools, they're doing a great job, don't get me wrong, but I wanna focus on roads.
Well, I think the focus is on roads right now due to the fact that we've got about a $12 million ending fund balance in the road department. And every gallon of gas people buy wherever they are, we get a certain percentage of that for gasoline tax. And so, this was a surplus in the road fund that's been built up over the years. And of course, we're going to be getting some more relief on the internet sales tax when that baby starts delivering. So we're going to be getting a little bit more increase from the internet sales tax, things of that nature. But the Highway Department, they're on solid ground, and if I'm making myself clear, the roads are being addressed. The needs for what's the kicker is the Plainview Road situation that was generated by buying that supposedly.
Well, we have lots and lots of roads that we've done nothing with for many, many years. No kind of construction on, is my understanding. We're just we're just tearing the same roads up until we can't squeeze any more cars into the space.
You see,
We're going to need to start thinking down the road.
The only thing the highway department can do is road improvement. We can't build roads.
Right. Well,
We don't
I
have
think that's
that
why
authority.
we're here, is let's
Yeah,
create
so
an
all the
authority
thing
and
we're
means
doing
to
is
build some
improvement.
roads, yeah.
Yeah.
We've been an hour and 7 minutes now, so I'm gonna see if we can wrap
The
it.
short number, if it turns out that there's 1,000 houses in an elementary district, and it's roughly 6 million to do the roads around it, using Plainview kind of as an
Okay.
example, that's, for 15 years, that would be a 400 assessment
Per year?
Annual.
Per household?
for those 15 years to get
1,000 times, how much?
1,000 times,
400?
1,000 homes times 15 years at $400 a year gets you up to 6 million.
Is there an amortization?
That's just straight math. That's
Okay,
not
okay,
any-
all right.
And so I don't know,
That's
like,
interesting, yeah.
realistically, is that 1,000 students actually 600 homes
Yes, probably
of families? but then-
450 homes.
But then there's homes that don't have any kids in that
Right.
elementary that'll be in that area too, so.
Okay, all
That's-
right.
You know, they're going to.
That's sort of an order of magnitude answer. It might be 200 or 600, but it's that kind of range.
Big,
That's
big burden
That's a
on
big hit.
folks.
I don't
Right.
think that that's
It's a big burden.
possible. That's why we also need other means to fund them.
That's
besides that
multiple
special
buckets.
assessment.
Okay, all right, and we would start with, okay, so I think this body can make a motion to Public Works. I would entertain a motion to submit, to advocate for a wheel tax to Public Works.
I will make that motion. If you did not just do that, I'll make that motion that we recommend a $30 wheel tax, which is essentially a $21 net increase after the emissions testing goes away, to the wheel tax for each automobile. Do we need to address other buses? Are there different rates for commercial vehicles, or
It's a flat.
it's all we're
Flat.
saying? Okay.
Do you have a second for that?
I'll say that, yeah.
Okay.
With the stipulation that it goes for the capital improvements for roads.
Infrastructure.
Time out, I don't know that we have a quorum.
No,
There's
you
only
don't.
4 of us. There's only 4. Kush, there's only 4 on this special subcommittee.
How many, there's only 4 people on it, but we have 3.
So we have,
Yeah, there's 3.
3.
all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
By the way, anything, what you just passed is not binding.
No.
You haven't made any
it's just a
decisions.
recommendation.
This is just a recommendation by
Right.
this recommending body to send it on to Public Works.
Thank you. And I think we understood, we just felt like the minutes need to reflect that a body has been tasked with that. All right, so,
And
thank
guess who
you.
will be presenting that to Public Works?
I would thank Mr. Paul Johnson.
No, that's Mr. Phil Dodd. Mr. Phil Dodd.
It's tough being in charge of a
I'll
committee.
tell you what,
Kush will do it. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Our chairman will do it. We'll pass to the chairman. So to CTAS, that's action number 2. Action number 1, we just took. I would like one more action, and I would like for, if you two gentlemen would consider, and no is a reasonable answer, would you consider planning, engineering, and highway collaborating to determine a logical list and/or budget? Is there you'd almost backed into it a minute ago. You're talking about the Plainview has a budget, and John may have just kind of done it in a manner. But could y'all present any kind of support?
Is the long-term plan any way that you can do
Well,
math of, we have 6 projects at 7 million and plus over the next 20 years, and do some magic and come up with some?
We did look at the city's transportation plan versus the counties and tried to look at some comparisons as far as, because there's a lot of similar projects. Now, ours is so out of date and never was really completed the last time it was done back in 2004, I think. So, Mike's idea of using the improvements around the Plainview schools kind of as a guide would at least get us
Just tying it to some known.
Right, we can at least
numbers.
say, okay, we know that with this school, these are the improvements that are necessary. We could get some numbers that way, that'd be pretty
Yeah,
simple.
something, because
But-
I think it would behoove us to have some substance from departments and/or experts, which y'all are, as a part of the debate on the wheel tax. And John, have y'all been hired by the highway department to do consultation on this project?
We're doing what they're doing for Plainview only, I think. right now.
Initial phase.
Right, so
So you're-
just the widening and intersection improvements basically
Yeah,
is the summary
okay.
of what's going on there.
Could you
We're-
provide any kind of preliminary numbers to these guys?
We can
For that
through
one?
Greg, because what we're giving Greg is, since they're doing it with their crews, what they can do with their crews, they're doing with crews, we're giving him a budget estimate of if it was bid compared to the Murfreesboro projects that we're doing, using those prices, current
Yeah.
Murfreesboro prices, what would it cost? So that hopefully he can then look at what does it cost him of materials plus labor, So he'll know both, what would this have
Yeah,
cost if we
from
had to
open
bid
market,
it
yeah.
versus what we're having to spend.
And I think we need to understand what it would cost had it been bid, and we need to be prepared to, if we have one project that's realistic in mind, and we're asking for $7.5 million, knowing that it's going to expand, then that would be helpful.
Okay, and that's what so far we've given, I think, 3 phases of estimates to Greg, and then working on 2 more, I think. And it's by road, and that's how we've done it so far. This section of road is sort of a phase.
Yeah, okay.
I think there's one other need in the
Land.
And infrastructure.
in the formula of the computation. The other need is going to be is how many rooftops, not how many students, but how many rooftops are in a school zone.
Can you find that out?
We should be able
On
to
our
make some
behalf,
calls
just pull-
and figure that out, just to give
I don't know if it's on a website.
I'm sure it's not static, but as far as per zone, but we know people at the school central's office, and I'm sure could give us some.
Maybe it's the
ballpark on that.
Christiana,
They probably have a call.
the new Christiana Elementary School, maybe, I don't have to do a lot of that.
Yeah, what you were just asking about, that should be relatively, I would think, easy. They should be able to know that pretty simple.
And if we could have that by the first Tuesday after the first Monday of February.
Public Works.
Yeah.
The 4th.
We could do that.
February 4th. And then Nick and I perhaps could have some information by February 4th from CTAC. I mean, we'll
Just like within
at
that,
least get our
we will
request
do our
out.
best.
Yeah, get our request out. And this meeting, our next meeting, which
We
is
don't have anything set.
we've been doing third Wednesday. Today's Tuesday. What's today?
It was moved to a Tuesday because of other things, I guess, I don't know.
Okay.
Well, we thought Mike was gonna be here, I think, is what the.
Okay. What had our routine had been?
Wednesdays,
Third Wednesday?
I believe so. Do you want to continue? Third Wednesday for February is gonna be solid waste. There's a,
Yeah, I think.
That's, of course, that's at
I think you and
night.
I keep confusing the solid waste.
It's
and this
hard,
one.
yeah.
Let's, y'all help us remember what day we've been meeting for this sick meeting. I have it on November the 12th, which is the second Tuesday. I had it on the second Tuesday of October. It looks like we may be second Tuesdays, Rachel.
February 4th.
So that would
That's
be-
when, February 4th is when Public Works is.
Oh,
That's the regular Public
So
Works
the
meeting.
second Tuesday in February is the 11th.
11th.
Yeah, and I think I may be confusing it even further, so I'm sorry. When have you had, what were your previous meetings? What dates were they?
Yeah, I don't
I didn't
have
bring my
last
last
year's calendar.
calendar with me either.
had a meeting on November the 13th. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that was with Rob Mitchell.
I have November the 12th at 11:30, and I have October the 29th at 11:30. Those were both Tuesdays. That was the SIC committee.
You said November the,
12th, October the 29th.
And so the next second Tuesday is the February the 11th.
I'm not seeing a pattern, so I'm sorry. What does this body wish to meet?
I'm okay with February 11th, if there's no other conflicts with
Paul?
you guys.
My schedule is very flexible.
February the 11th? At 11:30, room 205. Any other business that anybody want to kick around? Meeting adjourned. Nick, thank you.